All right, strap in, everyone. Let's take a deep dive into something I think you'll find really interesting: design thinking. And no, we're not talking about the artsy stuff. We're going to explore how this approach can actually make you a better engineer.
Exactly. Because with design thinking, it's all about understanding your user's needs
Yeah.
before you even start thinking about writing code. It's something companies like Apple and Google have used to make products people really love, not just ones that technically work.
That's what I find so cool about it. As engineers, we already love to solve problems, right?
Right.
But design thinking can take us a step further to create solutions that are both functional and user-friendly.
It's kind of like the difference between building an app that simply works, you know, versus one that people genuinely want to use.
Okay, so how does this all actually work? I've heard of like the 5 phases of design thinking,
Yeah.
but I'm not quite sure how they connect with engineering.
You can think of it like a roadmap, but instead of just mapping out features, you're mapping out the entire user experience.
Hmm.
And you begin with empathizing,
Hmm.
really trying to understand the user's needs and their pain points.
I think that's where it becomes especially important for engineers. Like,
Yeah,
it's so easy to get caught up in all the technical stuff, and sometimes we forget about the actual person on the other end using our product. But that empathy piece, I think that's what makes good engineering great.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Have you ever used an app or maybe a website that just felt super clunky
Mm-hmm.
or frustrating?
Oh, yeah.
Chances are whoever developed it, they just didn't spend enough time empathizing with the user.
That's so true. I remember using this one health app. It was such a nightmare to use. Clearly, whoever designed it had never tried to track their calories or anything like that.
That's a perfect example of what can happen when you kind of skip that empathy phase.
Hmm.
And honestly, we see this a lot, unfortunately, in software development.
So, how can we avoid falling into that trap? How do we start to integrate design thinking into our work as engineers?
Well, let's look at some real-world examples. Think about apps like Instagram or Spotify. They're constantly getting updated based on what users are saying.
Right.
That's design thinking in action.
It's like they're constantly experimenting and seeing what works, what doesn't.
Yeah, yeah.
And then they make changes based on what they learn.
They figured out that balance,
Yeah.
between adding functionality but also creating that really intuitive, smooth experience.
Yeah.
And that's why people love using those apps.
It's almost like they're using their users to help design the app in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where things get interesting for you as an engineering student. Design thinking isn't about replacing methods you already know, like agile development.
Okay.
It's about enhancing them.
Got it. So you're not throwing out what you already learned.
Right.
You're just adding this extra layer of understanding the user to the process.
Exactly. By incorporating design thinking into your agile sprints, for example, you're making sure that the user's needs are always at the forefront. You're constantly asking yourself, how will this new feature actually benefit the user?
Makes sense. It's kind of like you're weaving that empathy into the entire development process
Yeah.
instead of just tacking it on at the end as an afterthought.
And you know what's fascinating? The Netflix recommendation algorithm is a great example of this. They've used data about how people use the platform, combined with AI, to create a system that's always learning.
So they're using design thinking to like get people to watch more Netflix. That's pretty smart.
Uh-huh. It's not just building an algorithm. It's about creating an entire experience for each user.
I see.
That's the power of this approach. It's about that big picture thinking, how all the little pieces work together to make a really impactful experience.
Okay, you've convinced me. Empathy is definitely the secret sauce here. But I think a lot of engineers might be wondering, how do we actually do that? How do we go from this purely technical mindset to one that really focuses on the user?
There are a few things you can start doing. First, avoid what we call solution-first thinking. Don't just jump into a technical solution right away.
Okay.
Spend time really digging into the problem you're trying to solve for the user.
I guess it's kind of like a doctor diagnosing a patient. You wouldn't just prescribe medicine without figuring out the symptoms and the cause, right?
Exactly. You need to do your research, gather information before you even start to think about potential solutions.
Ah,
One way that's really effective is user interviews,
right.
actually talking to your target users,
Yeah.
understanding their frustrations, their desires.
So it's not just like observing them.
Right.
It's having real conversations, really trying to get inside their heads.
Exactly. You can go even deeper by creating what are called user personas. These are basically fictional representations of your ideal user based on your research. Helps you get really specific about who you're designing for.
I'm starting to see how all of this comes together now. It's like you're building this detailed profile of your user,
Yeah.
almost like getting to know a friend.
And just like getting to know a friend, the more you understand them,
Yeah,
the better equipped you are to create something they'll actually appreciate.
that's a great analogy. So, besides user interviews and those personas, what other tools can engineers use to build empathy?
Another technique that's really helpful is empathy mapping. It's basically a visual exercise. You're mapping out what your user's saying, thinking, doing, and feeling, all in relation to the problem you're trying to solve.
I can see how that would be really useful, especially to organize all that information you've gathered from those user interviews.
Yeah, and it helps you really see things from the user's point of view. It makes it more tangible.
So we've got user interviews, personas, empathy mapping, but what about actual testing? When does that come into play?
Testing with real users is super important, and it should happen early on and often. The sooner you can get your ideas in front of real people,
Yeah.
the sooner you can get feedback and make changes.
So don't wait until you have this perfect, polished product to start testing.
Exactly. Get those early prototypes out there,
Yeah.
see how people react. It's a great example of this. Google Maps and their accessibility features. They added those wheelchair accessible routes after doing a ton of research with the disabled community.
That's a fantastic example. It really shows the power of empathy in driving innovation. They didn't just add a feature, they solved a real problem for a huge group of users.
And they did it by truly listening to the needs of those users and then incorporating that feedback.
Okay, you've sold me on empathy. But I think it would have helped to see some more concrete examples of design thinking in action. Actual case studies that demonstrate how this approach has created successful products.
You want some stories?
Yes, stories. Let's hear them.
I think you'll be surprised how widely used design thinking is, even in some unexpected places. First up, IDEO. They're a legendary design firm, really known for their human-centered approach. And get this, they use design thinking to redesign the shopping cart.
Wait, the shopping cart. What's so interesting about that?
You'd be surprised. They had this challenge of making it safer, more efficient.
Okay.
Sounds simple, but it meant understanding what both shoppers and store employees needed.
I'm intrigued. How do they tackle this?
They started by just watching shoppers, paying attention to their frustrations, their pain points, like kids getting their fingers pinched in the baskets, carts tipping over, having a hard time moving through crowded aisles.
So they were really thinking about the shopping cart from the perspective of the person using it.
Exactly. And based on what they observed, they started brainstorming solutions. They experimented with different materials, different shapes, using rapid prototyping to test out their ideas quickly.
So they weren't afraid to try different things, even if they didn't work perfectly right away.
Right. And through this iterative process, they landed on a design that had things like child safety seats, modular baskets, and a much more stable base.
Wow. So they completely reinvented the shopping cart. And it all started with empathy and that willingness to just experiment.
And what's important here is that design thinking can be applied to anything, even something as ordinary as a shopping cart.
It's about looking at the world and seeing how things could be better.
Yeah.
And then actually figuring out how to make those improvements happen.
Now, for a more techie example, let's talk about how Google used a design sprint to improve Gmail's interface.
Gmail. I live in my inbox. What was the challenge there?
Well, they needed to make it much more intuitive and user-friendly,
Okay.
but they only had 5 days to do it.
5 days.
Yeah, so they used something called a design sprint, basically, a
Right.
super fast version of the design thinking process.
Sounds intense.
It was. They brought in a whole team, designers, engineers, product managers.
Wow.
Everyone worked together to come up with ideas, build prototypes, and test them out.
So it was all about speed and collaboration.
Exactly. And the results were impressive. They came up with things like smart replies and the undo send feature during that sprint.
It's amazing to think that those tiny design choices, which we just take for granted now,
Right.
are a result of this intense process.
Exactly. And those features have made a huge difference to how millions of people use Gmail every day.
Yeah.
It just shows what you can do when you have that user focus and a really focused effort.
These examples are really interesting. It's amazing how design thinking can be applied to so many different challenges. Do you have any other case studies for us?
Oh, yeah, I've got one more.
Huh?
Let's talk about Airbnb and how they managed to turn their business around.
Oh.
They were actually close to going bankrupt at one point.
I had no idea. What went wrong?
They were having a really hard time getting people to pick through them
Hmm.
and building trust with users. Their website was a mess. The pictures were bad, and people were just hesitant to stay in a stranger's home.
It sounds like they were missing that empathy piece we were talking about.
Exactly. So they completely shifted their focus to user experience.
Okay.
They realized how important good photos were, so they hired professional photographers to take pictures of all the properties.
So they went from these like blurry, low quality images
Yeah,
to beautiful professional photos that made people want to book those places.
exactly. And they also focused on building trust by adding things like user reviews and verified profiles.
Makes sense.
They wanted people to feel safe and confident when they book through them.
So basically, they redesigned the whole experience of booking a place to stay to make it more user-friendly and trustworthy.
Right, and it worked. They went from almost bankrupt to a multi-billion-dollar company just by focusing on the user.
That's pretty inspiring. It really shows how putting the user first can make a huge difference. And it all ties back to design thinking, right?
It absolutely does. Airbnb's story is a great reminder that no matter what you're building, whether it's a product or a service,
Yeah.
understanding and meeting the needs of your users is the most important thing.
Okay, I'm totally on board with design thinking now, but I think it can still feel a bit abstract, especially for someone who's just starting out.
Right.
How can our listeners actually put this into practice? What's one concrete step they can take today?
Well, we thought it would be fun to walk through a quick activity, something you could do right now to start using those empathy muscles.
Ooh, I love interactive stuff. What are we going to do?
We're going to try creating an empathy map. It's a really handy tool for getting inside your user's head.
Mm.
And we're going to use a scenario that's relevant to your engineering studies.
Perfect. Let's do it.
All right, imagine you're building a learning app for other engineering students, specifically first-year students who are struggling with coding.
I can relate to that. Coding can be really intimidating when you're just starting out.
Right. So to create our empathy map, we're going to focus on 4 questions. What does this user say? What do they think? What do they do? And lastly, what do they feel?
So we're trying to get a complete picture of their experience, right?
Yes,
Not just what they're doing, but also what they're thinking and feeling.
exactly. Let's start with, what does the user say?
Mm-hmm.
What might a first-year engineering student who's struggling with coding be saying?
Well, I think they might say things like, I need some simpler tutorials, or I wish there was an easier way to learn this stuff.
Yeah,
This is too hard.
exactly. They might even be, feeling frustrated, saying things like, coding is just impossible, or I'm never going to get this.
Oh, for sure. I remember feeling that way when I first started coding.
It's a common experience,
Mm.
but it's important to, acknowledge those frustrations.
Yeah.
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 Okay, so now let's move on to what the user might be thinking. What's going on inside their head?
I think a lot of self-doubt creeps in, like, am I even smart enough for this? Or maybe I'm not cut out to be an engineer.
Yeah, that self-doubt is a big one. They might also be thinking, I'm going to fail this class, or everyone else seems to get it but me.
It's so easy to compare yourself to others, especially in a field like engineering.
Right. Okay, so now let's switch gears and think about their actions. What does the user actually do when they're struggling with coding?
Well, I imagine they spend a lot of time searching for help online, like watching YouTube tutorials or looking at forums.
Yeah, they might also be skipping over the hard stuff in the textbook, or even avoiding assignments altogether because they feel so overwhelmed.
And they might be afraid to ask for help from like a professor or a classmate because they don't want to look stupid.
That's a good point. All right, so last piece of the puzzle here. What does the user feel?
I think it's probably a whole mix of emotions, right? Overwhelmed, frustrated, maybe even a little defeated at times.
Definitely. But there's probably also some hope mixed in there, a desire to learn and succeed.
And maybe even a little excitement about what they could do with coding if they could just, get past this hump.
Yeah, for sure. Now, take a look at this empathy map we've created. It really gives us a good picture of what our user's going through, right?
It does. We've gone beyond just the basic facts about them and really dug into the emotional side of things.
And this is where the power of empathy really comes in. We can actually use these insights to inform our design.
So instead of just building an app that teaches coding, we're building an app that solves the specific problems the student is facing.
Exactly. So what features do we think we might want to include based on what we've learned?
Well, first off, we need to make sure it has clear, concise tutorials, right? Something that breaks down those complicated concepts into smaller, more manageable chunks. No more jargon.
Definitely. We also need to give them lots of chances to practice, maybe some interactive coding challenges or projects.
Oh, and what about a feature that connects them with a mentor or a tutor for some one-on-one help?
I like that. And how can we address that fear of failure? Maybe a system that celebrates their progress even the small wins, so they feel more comfortable experimenting without worrying about making mistakes.
Woo! We could even gamify the learning process, give them points or badges for completing challenges.
That's a great idea. That would make it way more engaging for them.
So we've gone from understanding the user's struggles to brainstorming actual solutions for them. It's amazing how empathy can lead to such creative ideas.
And this is just the beginning. The more we understand our users, the more effective our solutions will be.
Okay, let's step away from our imaginary app for a bit and talk about some companies that are actually using design thinking in the real world. Like, how about Google and their approach to accessibility in Google Maps?
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
We touched on it earlier, but I'd love to hear more about how they used user feedback in their design process.
Well, they realized that people in wheelchairs were having a lot of trouble getting around, right? Stairs, curbs, all those obstacles made it really difficult to find accessible routes.
So they didn't just assume they knew what wheelchair users needed, they went straight to the source.
Exactly. They did tons of research, talked to wheelchair users, observed them navigating the city. They really wanted to understand what they were going through.
It wasn't just about adding a little checkbox that says wheelchair accessible. It was about really getting into the user's head.
Right. And based on that research, they were able to develop features like wheelchair accessible routes that avoid all those obstacles.
They even added a feature where users can report accessibility issues, so it's like a crowdsourced system for improving the accuracy of the data.
It's a great example of how listening to your users can lead to real innovation and make things more inclusive.
And it shows the importance of designing for everyone, not just the average person.
Absolutely. Okay, so how about another tech giant that's really focused on the user? Apple.
Ah, yes, the masters of sleek design and intuitive interfaces. What can we learn from them?
One thing they do really well is simplifying complex technology. They get that not everyone is a tech expert, so they try to make their products easy for everyone to use.
Yeah, like the iPod. It totally changed how people listen to music. But it wasn't just the technology, it was how simple and easy it was to use.
Exactly. They took something complicated, digital music, and made it accessible to everyone.
And they pay attention to the little details, too, like the satisfying click of a button or the smooth transitions between screens.
Yeah, those details can make a big difference in how people experience a product.
It's like they're designing feelings and experiences, not just devices.
That's a great way to put it. So engineers, remember, it's not enough for something to just work. You got to think about how it feels to use it, how it looks, how it fits into people's lives.
It's about the whole package, the entire experience. So how about an example that's a bit more relevant to our engineering students here? Have you ever used Wolfram Alpha?
Oh, yeah. It's like a super calculator that knows everything.
I use it all the time for my classes.
It's a great example of design thinking in education. They realized that students needed a better way to access information and solve problems.
Right. Instead of just giving you a bunch of data, it lets you ask questions in plain English.
And you get back these detailed answers with visuals and step-by-step solutions. It makes math and science so much easier to understand.
Plus, they're always adding new stuff, so it's always up to date.
It's a great example of how design thinking can make learning more engaging and effective.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get the hang of this. Empathy, user research, iterative design, a focus on the big picture. It's all coming together.
That's great to hear. And remember, you can use these principles for any project, no matter how big or small.
It's all about that user-centered mindset.
Exactly. And the more you practice, the easier it will become.
All right, so let's wrap things up with a quick recap of what we've learned about design thinking today.
Sounds good. First things first. Engineers, you got to look beyond the code.
Right, it's about solving problems for people, not just building things.
And empathy is absolutely key. Take the time to really get to know your users.
Test your ideas early and often, and don't be afraid to make changes based on feedback.
And remember, design thinking isn't just for designers.
It's for everyone.
It's for anyone who wants to create innovative solutions.
So to all our future engineers out there, we encourage you to start using design thinking in your own projects.
Even if it's just a small personal project, think about the user. How can you make their life better?
The best way to learn is by doing. So here's a final thought for you to consider.
We challenge you to create an empathy map for your next project.
Really get inside the head of your user and see how it changes your approach.
You might be surprised by what you discover. And who knows? Maybe you'll create the next Airbnb or Google Maps.
That's all the time we have for today. But we hope this deep dive into design thinking has inspired you to think differently about engineering.
You have the power to build a better world, one user-centered solution at a time.
We're excited to see what you create.
Until next time, keep diving deep and keep innovating.
And remember,
The world needs your ingenuity.
so go out there and build something amazing.
And you know what? Maybe we'll feature you on a future episode.
That's right. We'd love to hear about the amazing things you're building.
So keep us posted.
All right, that's a wrap for today.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into design thinking.
We hope you found it insightful and inspiring.
And remember,
Empathy is key.
go out there and build something amazing.
We'll see you next time.